With the fear of being way too honest at the start of this vlog, all I'm going to say is I had a coffee. I've been stuck in traffic for about 30 minutes longer than I'd like to. I need the toilet. You know we're in London. Mexico prep 250k starts today with a VO2 max test at altitude.
Pushing here and driving here, good stuff. Come on, you're going to get deep into this stage now. You're looking strong here all the way through again. That form staying strong. Here it is. Nothing too wild, but just get a bit of a picture of everything and where you're at. That's the thing, the variety of what you can be good at. You want to step into that? So let's go if you want to step off there for free. And what you see is that we've got the room set there, about 3,000 metre mark for today. In here, just under 15% of the air is oxygen compared to 21% of the air at sea level. So we're simulating that kind of 2,700, 3,000 metre. This is going to be a small prick on the finger, on the end of the finger, like so. That's going to go in there. And we're just trying to get a little drop of blood. I'll wipe that first bit and take the blood sample. So we've got a little bit of blood on there. It's just going to take 60 seconds just to count down from there.
So the test went like this: 3,000 meters of elevation, 2-degree incline. We started the test at 8 kilometers per hour. We ran at that for 4 minutes. Then it would increase every 4 minutes after James had performed the test, as you can see him doing right now, whereby he took a sample of blood, checked the amount of lactate that was in, or measured the amount of lactate that was in my system. I believe I finished somewhere in the round of 16 kilometers per hour, which is when I was absolutely wrecked. When we talk about lactate, let's keep this really simple. Think of it as a waste product that builds up while you're training for exertion. And essentially through our breathing rate and everything like that, we are working harder to clear that build-up. There is a point which we call the lactate threshold, whereby that waste product is building up in our system faster than we're able to clear it. Why is that important for what I'm doing? Because essentially in the short term, it affects performance. It makes us have to work a hell of a lot harder. Our muscles aren't getting the oxygen delivery that it actually needs. And then long term, obviously recovery becomes a huge issue. What we were able to do from finding our lactate threshold is, in layman's terms, James basically turned around and said on the graphs, it's like, look, this is the point, this is the speed, and this is the heart rate that you were at, whereby your body hit that point where it couldn't clear the wastage as fast or effectively as you need it to. So in a nutshell, it tells me to stay the bloody hell away from that area in Mexico. That's a red flag there. And then also it gave me a perfect speed realm to work within to build my base, which is that zone 2 perfect base for altitude, which is what I wanted. Don't know if you can see them, but they're both black from all the tests where I had to get little bricks. But amazing test. I say amazing. It was awful, as all those kind of ramp tests are. So now James will take away all the information, go into more detail, send it all over to me. Basically what he said from the graph is that it makes sense with the style of training that I'm doing, that my ability in that zone 2 area is really, really good, and he wants to just stretch that out before we get a secondary peak, which is what I got today. And then that top end threshold, that's more for 5 and 10k runners, is you are up in that lactate threshold area far faster than what I would be with the style of running that I'm doing, but your ability to buffer that lactate for longer is better than what I would be, because I don't do many 5 or 10k all out efforts. So it was sucky, it was really hard, but really, really interesting. Now I really need to eat, because I've been at altitude, I've been running for about 40 minutes, it makes me damn hungry. We scooted back to the car. I must admit, I felt absolutely great after the test. You always do with those kind of ramp tests. 5 minutes afterwards, heart rate's in a pretty good position, and you're like, oh, I probably should have pushed a little bit more. You feel quite comfortable. That reflective phase, which is really important, I guess. But I am so tired now. I literally got on the tube. I fell asleep on the tube and woke up to the sound of next stop is Stratford. So that shows that I obviously really pushed myself, which is amazing. Now I need to get out of London and get home. It's a 2-hour trip for me each way normally. So get home, recover, have a look and see, well, you're seeing it before me. I actually need to get home and have a look to see what footage James was able to get during the actual run. So this is the first initial test done. So essentially what James is going to do is give me some new heart rate zones, right? So when I talk about heart rate zones, predominantly this is like a rule of thumb across all kinds of running. We have an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, or 80% of the total volume of time that you run, whether you run, say you run 5 times a week, so 3 or 4 of those runs predominantly are going to be low and slow. Zone 2, maybe zone 3, pushing every now and again. There's a relative place where I sit, right? My heart rate at sea level, essentially. My zone 2 is between 125, 135. It's about right. Maybe 135 is a little bit high. But anyway, that's about that. At altitude, that's more likely going to be 135 to 145. So what he's going to do is give me some new zones and then how to implement them with my style of training, whether it means I start to spend more time at that higher heart rate to adapt and build that base at a higher position so I can tolerate a little bit more. Obviously, I'm going to have one of the masks. That whole room essentially was controlled at 3,000 meter altitude, so I didn't end up having to wear a mask, which anyone who's ever done like pneumonia testing or anything like that where you have to wear the mask, that's amazing, because that claustrophobic feeling makes you want to quit so much earlier than you probably have to. So I'm going to wear my mask for a lot of the low and slow stuff, which again I will then go, right, it's a replicative speed to hit that heart rate zone. And then the rest of my training will probably be adapted to sit around that. So James is gonna have a chat with Sam to make sure everything fits. But essentially what it does is it gives me some data to be able to start training at relative heart rate zones for the altitude. And then all of the acclimatization of the altitude stuff is gonna come from the mask. So it's all about ticking off boxes, because anyone who's been at any form of altitude, you don't want the headaches, you don't want the sickness, you don't want any of that sort of stuff. And all of this oxygen mask stuff is essentially going to help you with that. It just means that it's going to take the edge off. Don't get me wrong, running 250k at altitude is going to be horrific, but we get it done. So if you've got any questions, as I always say, literally just fire those questions below. Any of the particular data that you want to see or information or the what's, whys and hows, ask below. I'm more than happy to get James on a podcast, for instance, to talk about it. I'm sure he would be happy to if you want to expand on that, the whys and all the rest of it. Also as well, one thing he was talking to me about was it's actually really beneficial for CrossFit and lactate threshold training and everything like that as well, because it's a very similar kind of thing. You spend a lot of time at high intensity, and essentially being able to tolerate that high intensity zone, or zone 3 in this sense, for longer periods of time or more effectively is going to help you generally in terms of your CrossFit. So he's actually got a few CrossFit athletes and everything like that who goes in there, which I found really interesting, because I always thought when you say altitude, you just presume mountain climbers and ultra runners who run up mountains and shit. But we're very interesting. Anyway, I need to go home. I need to get home. I'm going to say bye now because I need to get home. All right. Thanks so much for watching. As always, I will put loads of different vlogs and bits and pieces together as I always do for this trip. We've got 4 months of prep to go. It will probably be a 12-week intensive prep. Everything else around it is going to go with the rest of my training and rehab a little bit with this ITBS, because I still need to make sure that this, essentially ITB syndrome is an overusage issue, yes, but there's normally a weakness that we need to figure out as well. So we're going to do that. I'm now going to go because my phone's ringing. See you in the next one.